By knowing your character's ultimate wants, their fears, and their relationships to other characters and their environment, we can create a meaningful foundation on which to build character behavior on. And this will help us create characters that are emotionally true and feel like real people with their own inner world, as opposed to mere extensions of ourselves. Welcome back to another episode of the Pen to Plot podcast with your hosts, KJ Herman and Chelsea Fawcett.
We're your creative besties, and we're here to cheer you on and help you stay inspired to achieve your writing dreams.
One of the biggest challenges in story development is creating interesting, engaging characters that readers actually care about and connect with. But when we only write what we know, as the saying goes, we end up kind of making all of our characters sound the same. So if you two would like to have these juicy, complex, full-body characters in your story, then I have a technique that may help. I'd like to actually show you a 3-step method that ensures your characters will sound like complex, interesting, real people using concepts I've learned actually in professional acting. Plus, why having empathy for people you may hate is actually the secret to being a better writer overall, which I'll get into that concept at the end of the episode if you want to stick around. As an audience, we love seeing characters that feel like they are their own person, that they have their own inner world, their own wants and fears and needs. And a common trap that we can fall into as writers is making all of our characters sound in some way like kind of extensions of ourselves, whether or not we even realize that we're doing it. Everyone ends up having the same sort of understanding of right and wrong, the same inherent moral code, which is usually based on our own moral code. And this results in flat, one-dimensional characters that are honestly kind of boring. Not that you and I are boring, but when everyone sounds the same and thinks kind of the same, that is. Or even on the flip side of this, we actually end up writing very shallow antagonists because we're approaching them from the lens of our own perspective of what right and wrong is. And coming to them with that perspective actually ends up making it super obvious that we as the author clearly doesn't have an understanding of what the villain's unique perspective is. And this ends up turning the character into kind of a caricature that doesn't feel true to how that type of person may actually act in real life. It's not grounded in reality and can come across as cartoonish. If that's what you're going for, fine, but this is about creating complex, real people kind of characters. And, we usually don't even recognize that we're doing this sort of thing until somebody else reads our work and makes a comment, which is super annoying. I'm no exception. I wasn't recognizing that I was doing this with my characters and that all of my characters kind of just sounded like me, but with different hats on until somebody reading my work pointed it out. And even then, I couldn't really understand why that was, because I am me. And all of these characters are coming from my brain, my thoughts. They're coming from within me. It's not as if I can fully dip into the mind of another person and live their life in order to get a completely unique perspective for that character that I'm writing. Right? So, actually, as it turns out, you can kind of do that. The answer was sitting under my nose the entire time. And it actually, for me, all came down to what I learned while I was studying acting. Specifically, the Meisner Acting Technique that I learned at the neighborhood playhouse, school of theater. Anyway, the Meisner Acting Technique. The core concept, and probably the most quoted from this acting technique, is the idea that the performer must live truthfully under the given imaginary circumstances. So, this is in regards to how the actor approaches their work on stage, and that they must fully believe the fictional world they are in, and that they must react truthfully to their environment and their scene partner without any pretense, without faking any emotions. I also think that this principle can be applied to the process of character development in story writing. This episode of Pen to Plot is sponsored by us. Alongside our Writerly podcast, we're also committed to supporting authors with high-quality, story-driven audiobook narration and aesthetic social media content designed to get novels and personal author brands seen. So, if you like this voice, it could be used to narrate your next audiobook. If you'd like more information on how we can bring your story to life and get your novel and your brand seen, just visit us at www.pentoplot.com or visit the link in the description below. Now back to our regular programming. So, here's how you can live truthfully through your characters under the given imaginary circumstances of the story. 1. Define a clear objective. In the Meisner technique, this is usually what the actor wants to gain from their environment or their scene partner. So, what is their main objective when they enter the room, when they enter the scene? This could be a number of things. It could be to find something important to them, to complete an activity that is time sensitive and the outcome is important to them. It could also be to get something specific from their scene partner, whether that is an action from the scene partner or an item they're trying to get from the scene partner. Essentially, you are trying to gain something from the environment or your scene partner that is important to you and that is typically time sensitive. So you only have a limited amount of time to achieve the desired outcome. How can we apply this to our character development? I would like you to consider the following questions. What does your character want overall? And what are they willing to do to get it? And be specific. So, an example of this could be something like how Luke Skywalker's biggest core desire is to live a life of purpose. That's his big want. Underneath of the want of wanting to live a life of adventure, his core desire is to live a life of purpose. And so what has he been willing to achieve that core desire? Abandon his home, risk his life, has faced overwhelming enemies, he undergoes harsh training, and ultimately, in the end, he would choose death over what he sees as corruption. Knowing this very specific core desire for your own character will color their behavior in every scene that you put them in. So that's overarching. But you can also break it down further by considering their objectives scene by scene. And always remember to be very specific. Given this, you can now also consider the following questions, which are, what is your character's biggest fear? And what are they willing to do to avoid facing that fear? And how does that fear conflict with their core desire? On top of all this, you as the writer should also have somewhat of an emotional connection to this goal and fear. There should be something like a pinch for you. So that's something else in the Meisner technique, is a pinch. Like, ouch, that hurts. Or, I really connect with that goal or that fear. Like, that's something that would terrify me. Because if it affects you and it elicits an emotion from you, it's also very likely that it will incite a reaction in the reader as well. And that will invite them to be more emotionally invested in your character. 2. Allow your character to be influenced by relationships and point of view. Within the Meisner technique, actors are trained to bring a strong emotional point of view to a scene. That's how they feel about their scene partner or the situation. So, how can we apply this to character development? Get specific on your character's relationships to the other characters within your story. Be very specific about how they feel about each of the characters. And honestly, nothing should really be left neutral. There should only, in my opinion, might be kind of controversial, but there should only be feelings of love or hate and the why to varying degrees, but be that specific. The more specific you can get, the more interesting and engaging your character's interactions will be. Consider what history shapes those feelings, and how does it shape their actions? Does this change what they say or what they do? And this is also where subtext can come into play. Because ultimately, you don't want to just outright say the relationships between your characters. It can be inferred in some way. Okay, number 3, reactions guide dialogue. In the Meisner technique, actors are trained to listen and respond moment to moment instead of planning ahead. I believe that we can also apply this concept to our characters in action. So here's how we can apply the moment-to-moment concept in our character development. Now that we've defined our character's core desires, their greatest fears, and their relationships, we can explore our characters in the moment. Once you know these elements inside and out, just give yourself permission to write. Imagine your character's conversations and interactions as improvisation. Let your character's responses surprise you and see how that colors your story. Now, I know that there are, in the writing world, plotters and there are pantsers. Stephen King is a notorious pantser and chooses not to plot out any of his stories at all and just kind of does this moment-to-moment concept from the beginning to the end of his stories. At least what I know of him. I don't know if that's changed, but that's what he's known for. And that's one way to do it. But even if you do prefer to plot your novel, your story, and have somewhat of a structure planned out, like I do, because this is actually my preferred method, so you're in good company. Within each chapter and within each scene, there is still an enormous opportunity to live in this moment-to-moment way of writing. Improv is used quite a bit in the practice of the Meisner technique in something called the repetition exercise, which I won't get into here. But outside of that, this technique is ultimately one that can be used in script work. Like, it's made for that. It's made for the theater. But the whole process of it is more about being emotionally true in the moment to moment. So the objective at the end of, say, your chapter might be that the main character gets the MacGuffin. But on the way to that result, there is an infinite number of possibilities for emotionally true interactions between your character and the other characters in your story and the environment. Moment to moment is about allowing room for play. You already know your characters now. You know them inside and out. So you can breathe life into them and speak for them as if they were entirely different people. And that's how you live vicariously through your own characters and give them an inner life that is unique from your own, but still grounded in something that is emotionally true. Okay, so bonus. If you want to know why having empathy for people you may hate will actually make you a better writer, you can also reverse engineer these concepts. So let's consider a person in real life that you cannot stand, and you want to base a villain off of this person because you hate them that much. And that's one of the joys of being a writer, is that we can do that. How do you create a villainous character based off of this person without turning them into a caricature? Without maliciousness, consider what their core desires are. What are their greatest fears? And what are their relationships to those around them and their environment? Consider them with as much thoughtfulness as if you were considering yourself. So there you have it. 3 acting lessons you can use to create more complex, interesting, impactful characters for your story. By knowing your character's ultimate wants, their fears, and their relationships to other characters and their environment, we can create a meaningful foundation on which to build character behavior on. And this will help us create characters that are emotionally true and feel like real people with their own inner world, as opposed to mere extensions of ourselves. If you got value out of this episode, feel free to check out the rest of Pentaplot and subscribe for more craft exploration, stories, and insights on being a creative writer in 2025. Do you agree with this method of character development? Let me know in the comments. Keep dreaming, keep creating, and remember, your story matters. So let's write it. Yeah.